Dan, it's a pleasure. Thanks for doing this. I love to talk a little Bulls, a little White Sox with you. Let's begin with the NFL draft, not too far away. The Bears have two top 10 picks. How are you framing this? Is it historic because of the hype of Caleb Williams? Are you more of a wait and see approach for kind of a prove it deal for Ryan Poles? How do you see this draft for the Bears?
Well, I think the nature of it at the moment clearly is historic. They have the number one overall pick. They are taking what is believed to be depending how you believe the term generational to mean, a talent the likes of which doesn't come along every year or every couple of years at the very least. So we will see if up against the ignominious Bears quarterbacking history, somehow this is the year, this is the general manager, and this is the quarterback to make all of that pressure of history not matter.
The Bears only have 4 picks. Now they may garner more. We know who number 1 is. We don't know who number 9 is, but really overall, we do know what this team is going to look like. So, realistic expectations for this upcoming Bears team.
I think there's expectation. If you say realistic,
yeah,
I'm going to take realistic off the table because with what's going on, I think it's time to be a little unrealistic. There's teams every year that take a big jump. And with looking at where the Bears' contracts are, especially on defense, and what they did to go get Montez Sweat, they better be a top 5 defense this year with the young secondary that they have. And merely by the contract clock as a judge, they should make the playoffs this year. And anything other than that, regardless of what a true realist would say, I would be very disappointed if they didn't take that big leap. I don't know if they're going to do it, but I'm going to hold them to that because that's where they are right now.
Yeah, let's say, 3 more wins would put them at 10 wins. And then I asked myself, okay, well, is Caleb Williams 3 wins better than a combination of, because don't forget, Tyson Bagent started 4 games last year. And then you've got Justin Fields. Is Caleb Williams 3 games better? He should be. That would put him at 10 wins. That gives you a good chance to get to the playoffs. The one wild card for me is what the Minnesota Vikings do. Kevin O'Connell is a friend of mine. And, if let's say that the next CJ Stroud, so the quarterback not pick number 1, has an incredible season. If the Vikings move up, they're able to find a quarterback because they've got a couple picks to trade in the first round. You got the Packers and the Lions in your division. If O'Connell can do something with a young quarterback, all of a sudden the Bears find themselves in the most difficult division in the league.
Not to mention the acquisition of Aaron Jones as well, and the fact that you already have an essentially uncoverable wide receiver there, and all they need is somebody who gives them enough balance across from that. I saw one mock draft today, Brad Biggs of the Tribune has the trade up and them taking Drake May. And the comps on Drake May are one of these big, strong-armed, athletic enough Justin Herbert type quarterbacks. And if he's up to speed and we're looking at a division full of, at a bare minimum, competent quarterbacking from these young players, from these rookies, then yeah, it's going to be tough because he's a buddy of yours. I'm a big fan of the job that he's done and the steadying influence that he's been there.
I doubt Ryan Poles did this, but I'd be curious to know that if they actually asked Caleb Williams in one of their many visits that they've had. By the way, I say realistic expectations because I feel like our expectations have grown because of the Bears, of how much they have talked in-house about how much they like Caleb Williams. But if Poles asked him, would you rather have a better offensive line or another weapon to throw to, right, for pick number 9? Do you want better protection, or do you just want simply another weapon to go and find and to gain yards down the field? Do you have a preference, not necessarily player-wise, but do you think this should be more about, if you want a quarterback that plays on time, to protect him and go maybe heavy in the offensive line, number 9, or just continue to add weapons, especially since Keenan Allen is not going to be here long term?
Well, we can actually have an example where this was done. Cincinnati asked Joe Burrow, what would you rather have? Because they had, I believe it was Penei Sewell, who was the best tackle available, and he said Jamar Chase. He apparently didn't bat an eye. He said, get me Jamar Chase. And that's the way he sleeps well at night. And as he says, right, Jamar is down there somewhere. And if Caleb Williams can develop any similar kind of on-field relationship, if a guy holds a block as long as he should or doesn't, with Caleb's ability to keep plays alive, if it makes him happier and more mentally healthy to have that receiver down there, I want what he wants.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Let's say that we were having this conversation 2 months from now, and I got an alert on my phone that the Bulls have just signed DeMar DeRozan to a 3-year deal, which it sounds likely.
No thanks.
I'm guessing you're not a great poker player.
I do not play poker. No, I love DeMar DeRozan with every caveat that is necessary here. He's a wonderful pro and a borderline Hall of Famer and a player's player. Guy's 34 years old. He just had another season leading the league in minutes. And what he does just doesn't have the value that it used to have. Right. He's a great example for younger players, and I know he can be fun to watch on certain nights, but it's enough as far as I'm concerned. It's time to play the basketball everybody else is playing and take a step back to try to take a couple forward.
You know, have you seen or heard of the book Spaced Out by Mike Prada of The Athletic?
No.
The Bull he wrote it in 2022. It's pretty recent. The Bulls' inability to take and make threes actually made me want to learn more about the three-point shot in the NBA and just why everyone else is moving in one direction, and then the Bulls seem to be where they are. DeMar DeRozan was 178th in the NBA in making three-pointers, and that's your primary scorer. Julius Randle had made, I believe, one more, and he only played 46 games. We haven't seen him play in months. The Bulls are in the bottom 5 of makes and attempts in three-pointers. And I just wonder, the book's called Spaced Out. It's really very simple. The more three-pointers you take, and by the way, the deeper you take them, the more it spaces out the floor. So not only is 3 more than 2, but it creates more lanes to the basket. And so it just seems like that mid-range game flies in the face of what we know as the new way to win in the NBA. Just watch the Boston Celtics upcoming here in the playoffs.
It would be the equivalent of an NFL team running the wing T. It would be the equivalent of a baseball team playing station-to-station ball and using the bunt to give away outs. The math doesn't work. It's the wrong way to play objectively. Right. They started every game over the last 2 years, I want to say on average, based on the differential in three-pointers made per game. They started every game down 8-0, which to me is fireable. That's fireable. You're starting every game down 8-0. You can't do that. If any other business, if this were some publicly traded business where there's a fiduciary responsibility based on the bottom line, people would lose jobs over it. But it's still so romanticized in large part by big men with big microphones who want to go back to the game that they better understood. That's not the game anymore. And anytime the Bulls want to get started and play it, I'm for it. Like the joke that we always had, that if you just were to listen to Bulls games, you get this, and you know how to like listen for NBA public address announcing. Most Bulls games sound something like this. Demar, 3-point field goal, random NBA guy. It's always, what a shot by they just got a 3. Demar works his way to the basket, scores or 2. 3-point field goal, guy on the other team who's really good, who you've never heard of. And it's over and over and over again. Every single night, they have so much heat loss and all of this canard over their clutch wins. It just means that they have to work so much harder to get into these games and let alone triumph in 37 of them, because you're starting every game the equivalent of down 8-0.
The stat they always seem to win is attendance. It's pretty spectacular.
They put on a great show. It is a fabulous dinner theater production. And for what they deliver from the moment you walk in that building, it is top notch. From the food to the stuff for kids to do, from it's a show, and it's it's a great experience, and they are in these games to make it feel like it was worth your while. That's a business that is simply disconnected from the business of winning NBA championships.
And one of the parts I enjoyed most about the book is learning about the Phoenix Suns, how they revolutionized it, and how much Steve Nash had to do with that. And one area that it looked like the Bulls did get right from that blueprint was Lonzo Ball. That ended very quickly. Do you think that we ever see Lonzo Ball in a Bulls uniform again? And I mean, actually, successful on the court.
No,
No,
I don't.
no.
There's no precedent for anybody in major competitive basketball to come back from cartilage cadaver replacement. It hasn't happened before. I would love for it to happen. I know there are realists with the Bulls who are trying to give him every carrot to return, every motivation, every resource to return. It reminds me a great deal of when the Bulls drafted Jay Williams, and he was the point guard of the future, and he was this wonderful electric player until he essentially broke himself in half on a motorcycle he couldn't handle.
Right.
And they said, he kept saying, I'm coming back. And they gave him every chance, and they gave him every free run of the facility, all the best doctors. But at some point, you just can't. So I wish for Lonzo's sake that first and foremost that this surgery allows him to have a lifestyle befitting, a 26, 27-year-old from here on in. But the idea of playing NBA basketball, competitive NBA basketball, is asking an awful lot medically.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm rooting for him. I've become a big fan of Lonzo, just kind of living through the LeVar stuff, especially being in Southern California, seeing his talent, how great he was at UCLA, watching his dad become a bigger star, and then ultimately watching Lonzo become the star and be the bigger, more recognizable name and becoming a really good NBA player on the cusp of great, it felt like. And I have a little bit more optimism than you do, but you and I are pretty close of what his NBA career may look like.
Ultimately, well, not to mention LaMelo has had his own injury problems that don't seem to abate, and LaMelo is a tantalizing talent.
Yes, he is.
LaMelo is better than Lonzo, and he sees the floor magnificently. There's wow moments every time you watch him play, and I don't know what his future is going to hold.
No, same. Yeah, we'll see if LeVar can fix that problem. Dan, my dad was a diehard Cubs fan. He was the kind of Cubs fan, no matter where you were in the country, you were going to know that he was a Cubs fan, whether you wanted to know or not. I love that about him. I'm wired a little bit differently. My son turns 4 on Saturday. I'm doing a little bit of a social experiment. I'm not pushing him either way. I'm just very curious how he comes to it. By the way, he may not like baseball, and that's fine too. But is it one player that he gravitates to? Is it his best friend in the team that he ends up with? I say all that to say, watching the current state of the White Sox, it's so much deeper than just a rebuild, right? From not only the current state for fans that are above that team, but when you have a 2-team market, and you are trying to keep fans, earn fans, grow fans. Jerry Reinsdorf to me feels like he's Al Davising this thing a little bit, where it's just being driven off the rails, where if his plan is to sell at some point when he passes, he's running it into the ground.
It's sort of Al Davis without the twisted win at all cost pathology. That at least Davis had. There's a method to the madness that you presumed a desire to vanquish his opponents, and that you at least had that as a fan, even if you thought he was sort of Howard Hughes at the end. I don't understand what the motivation is right now, other than it seems like there's an active desire to antagonize fans at every turn.
Right.
And it's too bad. I can't explain it. I can't answer for it. And I'm in a group chat with my best childhood friends, my White Sox fan friends going back to when we were toddlers. And we were spread all across the country right now, at times all across the globe. And whatever it means, anytime there is any mention of a threat to move to Nashville, everybody in my group chat basically says, please move. Our lives would be easier if you just didn't make this a piece of it anymore. And one of the people in the group chat is an owner of the White Sox. But as a fan is saying, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Now to the players on the field, thoughts on Colson Montgomery and how they should handle a prospect, because I remember it was probably a decade ago when the Cardinals were on a really great run, right? It was when they were regularly in the NLCS, they'd won a World Series, and every time they brought somebody up, they did something big in a playoff game. Guys where you're like, I don't know who this is. And I want to say it was Adam Wainwright, but someone said, how do you continue to get these players to perform when they've never been in these situations? And he said it is expected of them. Right? It is the expectations of it. That goes in the other direction, right? If you are currently in a White Sox uniform, virtually every time you take the field, you are expected to fail. And I just wonder, I just feel like I would not want a top prospect. At some point, he's got to come up. But I just wouldn't want a top prospect to feel what those guys are feeling unless I absolutely had to. But since you don't, the expectations of what's happening now, I wouldn't want to cloak that in Colson Montgomery just yet.
Certainly not. If I were Colson Montgomery, I would want to do everything I could possibly do to be in a different organization. And that is based on the fact that the guy who was in charge of the minor leagues, who now accidented and backstabbed his way up into the general manager job, I don't know that he was competent or qualified to do what he did. I certainly don't think he is competent or qualified to do what he's doing now. And the worry for Montgomery is you become representative of hope, which isn't fair to him.
Right.
And it's not fair for him. Like this, he's not Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams. I was going to say, yeah.
Caleb Williams is like, he's already making millions. Sure. He's already in LA and he wants all that smoke.
He does.
And baseball's different. Baseball's hard. Baseball is about how you deal with failure. Baseball is a lot of crappy days where you have to remind yourself, I can still be good. And most people in his position, even top draft picks, don't end up ever meeting the expectations just because of what the demands of Major League Baseball are. And the worry is that he becomes a cookie and says, hey, Colson Montgomery, don't look over here, Colson Montgomery. And then they're not doing what's best for him. They're doing what's best for a series in August, or doing what's best to sell some behind the scenes documentary that they're doing on the website. And I wish I trusted more that the White Sox would really be doing what is best for him as a developing player.
Yeah. Do the Cubs have a playoff team potentially?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the injury today that we just found out about to Seiya Suzuki is really, really unfortunate because he was an early MVP candidate who now is out with a strained oblique, and that hurts their offense. The offense has been carrying them. They're already being asked to deal with a Justin Steele injury, and the bullpen is shaky. But even through that,
I was going to say,
they're 9-6 through one of the more difficult parts of their schedule. So if some of these guys start coming
Cody
back,
Bellinger, Cody hasn't done anything.
Nothing. Ian Happ's been slumping for the last week and a half too. So, however, Craig Counsell has been putting this together with a play here, a play there, and pushing some of the right buttons, and the fact that Michael Busch is going to enjoy the honeymoon period before there's enough tape out there of enough of these swings. Yeah, I think the Cubs are really good. And if they can get a little bit of luck and the pendulum swings back to them, they're a tough team.
Dan, last one. Three Bass Lakes that I've got to get to in the Chicagoland area.
Oh, I can't tell you that. The number one Bass Lake is Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
it is a matter of knowing where and when. And if you go with a guide, particularly this time of year, maybe a week, 2 weeks from now, when you see the lilac buds start to look like they're thinking about blooming, if you do a guided trip with someone who knows where the smallies are around the rocks, off of the Shed Aquarium, off of the planetarium there, you can have yourself a day, man. They're going to get a state record one of these days, but there's regularly 5, 6, 7 pound smallmouth that'll just rip your arms off. And if you haven't done something similar with Lake Geneva, just up about an hour to our north off of Highway 50, there are all kinds of professional guides on Lake Geneva. That's my other suggestion to you. Do it on a weekday. Take a weekday out. Do not do it on a weekend when you've got all of the wakeboarders and all the water skiers out there. But the Lake Geneva fishery for largemouth, for smallmouth, it's amazing for big panfish. We're talking 14, 15-inch crappie you can get out of there. And in northern pike, you are allowed to use live rigged bait as long as you catch it yourself. And there are some areas where you can use live rigged perch for northern pike that, and we're talking 45-inch, 48-inch fish.
Dan, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.